Welcome back to our listeners and viewers of The Responsible Edge, the podcast exploring how to balance profit with purpose in an increasingly complex world. I'm Charlie Martin, your host, founder of TrueMark and the Anti-Greenwash Charter. And our article this week is Executive Search 2025, Balancing AI Innovation with a Human Touch. A look at how recruitment firms are navigating the fine line between efficiency and empathy as AI transforms leadership hiring. And I'm absolutely thrilled to say that we've got a real expert on the show today to unpick all of this. We've got Simon Hill, founder and CEO of Myco Search, with decades of experience connecting food tech and agri-tech innovators to the leadership talent they need to grow. Simon, it's absolutely brilliant to have you on the show this Friday morning. Thank you so much for giving up some of your time.
Thanks so much, Charlie. Really good to be here and great to talk today.
Simon, I've given a very, very brief introduction to you. And before our listeners and viewers go typing into LinkedIn and finding your profile and going and having a dig around, could you maybe give us a little bit more meat on the bone about Myco Search and kind of, what you guys are doing?
Yeah, okay. Well, I can summarize quite quickly, really, where we're at. Essentially, we're very niche, executive search, global, really providing talent into food tech and agri-food tech. So that's leadership teams who are really making an impact on how food is produced and what we eat. And that's it in a nutshell.
I love it. I love a good nutshell. That was a brilliantly introduced nutshell, very concise nutshell.
Not a longer version, but that's good. Yeah.
No, I'll have to take notes on that. I think there'll be a few people out there going, yeah, learn from Simon in terms of introducing things. But it's just on that point, slightly segueing out of our normal patter, but people do talk like you need to be able to explain things as simply as possible. You need a 12-year-old to understand what you're doing. And fortunately, Simon, I'm able to understand, which I think is sort of the barometer.
Hopefully that's not a reflection on my mental level, but it could be. But
absolutely not. No, it's very clear. So with that in mind of where we've got to with this, fairly niche and specialized executive search business that you set up, how on earth did we get here? What's the story? How do we end up here? And in particular, because of the nature of our show, we're obviously interested in understanding what ultimately has inspired you in your career to do what you've done.
Yeah, okay, certainly can. And obviously I've watched a lot of your shows, and I know a lot of people have really long backgrounds in sustainability or something that really shapes their career really early on. I'm probably a bit of a late bloomer, and I certainly am compared with a lot of the people you've had on. But I can remember the specific trigger point very clearly that led to sort of quite a drastic change in direction. So this was about 6 or 7 years ago. My son was at primary school, okay, and he went into school, and the teacher, unbeknown to us, that they showed them a David Attenborough documentary on global warming. Okay, I think we've all seen a few of them, and he came home absolutely traumatized. Really, really, really upset. He couldn't sleep for weeks. And he asked me quite directly, Dad, what are you doing to save the planet? Yeah. And it was quite a stark moment, really, for my son to sit there so upset and say, Dad, what are you going to do? How are you going to stop this? At the time, I got 25 years in exec search, mostly mainstream IT and technical. So building leadership teams around e-commerce or fintechs. And I had been making sort of a gradual change to sort of why am I doing this and what am I doing? But that just was the catalyst, accelerated everything. And I asked myself a couple of questions, and I think pretty good questions for people to ask themselves throughout the career. What am I really, really good at? And that was finding talent, building teams. That's kind of what I've done my whole career. So then where can I make the biggest impact? Okay. And that's not in building insurance companies or fintech teams. And I took some time to really sort of map out sectors that are going to make the big impact and shift the needle. And there's, renewable energy, there's some other sectors out there, but I focused in on the agri-food sector.
And Simon, let me ask you a couple of questions that will immediately jump out from that. First of all, in terms of you and mentioning, finding and sourcing world-class talent and building great teams, why is that such a talent for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's unusual. I'm kind of a techie by trade. So I did a computer science degree and I'm a geek. Okay. So, and I think a lot of people in this market aren't. They're quite kind of, salesy, and I'm really not. I'm kind of into the detail. I'm a good people person. I get on with people, but I think, going probably this will reference to what we talk about around AI. I'm quite a good judge of character and judge of potential, and I get a good hunch for people, and it's kind of, I think that's a little bit of a skill that people have or don't have, and within that, I could have gone an IT career. A lot of my friends did, and I went more away from that into the people business and into recruitment and sort of excelled there. And yeah, just sort of being able to kind of match people and kind of focus around people and what they want to do and being really kind of empathetic to what people need.
I love that. I think there's, again, so many things to pick out from what you've just said. That whole notion of the best salespeople within a sort of a selling environment are often the ones who aren't salesy by nature and perhaps have a different background or a different set of skills that make them so much more approachable and make them so much more accessible to people that ultimately want to buy. There's an odd sort of dynamic that goes on in that, and it applies to so many other things, doesn't it, beyond sort of search.
It
and
does.
then the other thing that really struck me from what you've said there, and again, we are going to talk about it today, but that notion of gut and of gut feel and how you've had 25 years of experience where you've presumably had quite a good gut feel just from the outset, but you've had 25 years of sort of developing that, the nuance, if you like, of that gut feel based with, aligned with experience, which presumably has made it even more powerful as you've got to this stage in your career.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, we'll reference into it again on the AI, but that kind of, that judgment and that kind of ability to kind of really understand what people are saying without saying, but backing that with the data, and having the data and the information around it, I think is what makes, really good exec search and good kind of people matching.
You said that you were looking around 6 years ago. You had this experience with your son. I have to say massive kudos to your son if he ever listens in on inspiring dad to go down this route. And it's fascinating. We hear it quite a bit, actually, from other guests who talk about, again, having that kind of engagement with your child. It is a very sensory kind of emotive experience that often seems to be, that sensory and emotive experience seems to be the stimulation for a lot of people to end up doing something different with their time. And again, it just happens to be in that form that you experienced it. In terms of food tech and agri-tech, what was it, when you identified those as the areas that you wanted to focus on, what did you observe that meant that you said, right, that's the place I want to
that's interesting. My granddad was a farmer, okay, so he kind of grew up arable farming, and I've loved farming and growing up in Cheshire, which is a heavy farming area. So farming's always kind of been around and something I've been passionate about. The food industry is chaotic. It's going the wrong way. It's doing a lot of harm. And, there's a lot of innovation there, a lot of things that can change, and I think we're really a really kind of nascent time in that industry where there's a lot of new technology coming through. And that excites me, working with new industries who are breaking new ground. But the amount of damage it does and the crisis point we're heading towards means it's just something that needs solving. So, I zeroed in across agri-food tech, and really that was 6 years ago. And now I've Myco Search is this year established, really to niche down further and really kind of what I saw within the industry I was working in was we were still working with big chemicals producers, big companies that are still doing some good but some harm. Okay, and this goes back to your greenwash charter, and it's okay. I don't want to do that. I want to only work with companies that are going to shift the needle, and therefore, kind of candidates I'm speaking with know that I'm representing them to good companies, and the companies know I'm only working with candidates who are, passionate about making a difference. So that's sort of a niche within a niche, but it's really, really rewarding. And God, I mean, as an aside, coming from a long time into this industry, it's brilliant. Really, really, really made the right choice. And people you talk to are doing really interesting stuff. and something you can be really excited about. And a lot of people are like me. They've done 20 years in, manufacturing or producing, I don't know, some sugar heavy food stuffs, and they want to now kind of use their powers for good, and they want to make a shift. So, I see a lot of leaders who want to make a difference. A lot of people who coming through like us, Charlie, they want to do more, want to help the planet. So, it's quite exciting to be a part of this movement.
Simon, I love it, and I'm feeling totally optimistic and inspired by what you suggested there. I'm going to ask you the devil's advocate question, though. Yeah. What within that niche of the niche, as you've described, which, by the way, I might be butchering it here, but essentially you're talking about finding the truly kind of purpose-driven and impact-driven organizations to work with within the food tech and agri-food industries. Is that right? It's just
yeah.
More on those. Yeah. And with that, what's challenging about that space? Like, what are the most difficult things that you deal with in Myco Search?
There's quite a lot of challenges. I mean, one is that a lot of the tech is new. Okay. So the talent isn't there. You're breaking new ground. So you're trying to bring people through who have got comparable skills or a background that shows potential, but they're not going to have a track record producing some of this technology or leading companies like this. Okay, so that's a key challenge. You're not following a template. And again, referencing into AI again, that we're going to talk about is why I'm so keen on this topic. But also there's an instability there. The market and if you know a lot about food tech, the last couple of years have been really, really rough. I know they've been rough globally across a lot of sectors, but a lot of my clients are Series A, they're startups, or they're getting an initial investment, and that's a tough market. So there's a lot of instability. So people have to be able to make a move, knowing that there's a risk involved, that some of these companies might not make it through to commercialization. But such amazing products, and it breaks my heart if companies don't make it. But clearly, we need it. We need it, and we need movement in food and across agriculture to grow and make more food. And my approach and my team's approach has always been completely open book. Okay, so where I've seen things go wrong is where people try and hide risk or try and gloss over something. Okay, you've got to go into something knowing what the risk is and explaining that right at the start. And if it's not right for somebody and somebody's too risk adverse, then they're not right for the role. And that's a big part of our role, is to really go and explain what the potential is and the potential upsides, it's going to be a fun journey, but also look at the risk and where somebody is in their life and their family life and their journey, and whether they are ready to make that risk and what happens if it goes wrong. So you've got to be open about the potential problems. What are your skeletons? It's part of our briefing call. What are the skeletons?
Oh, wow.
Where might the tech fall down? Where might there be a problem? Where might there be a problem with supply chain or commercialization? And, we cover that off early so that it doesn't then become a problem later on or after somebody's joined, 3 months down the line. And there's so many people out there who have that experience of joining a company and then finding out about something they didn't know. And it's just a waste of everybody's time if it doesn't work out.
Simon, I know that's a whistle-stop tour through you, but we're obviously going to link to Myco Search, and people can go and check out, the work that you guys are doing, and obviously check out your LinkedIn as well. For now, though, could we perhaps move on to this week's article?
Yeah.
I did mention the article by title at the beginning, but would you mind just restating that and then just providing us with a bit of a summary of the piece?
Yeah, okay. So it's quite an interesting article. What's it titled? Executive Search 2025, Balancing AI Innovation with a Human Touch. Okay. So really, the articles by Hunt Scannion Media, who've gone out into a lot of exec search leadership and looking at the changes of AI to our industry. Okay. I think that there's a few interesting points brought up, and I think, also timing, this was done earlier this year, and this market is moving so rapidly, that I think it's more relevant now than it probably was when it was done. And they were looking at how's it going to change, and it's already changed. Okay, so I think that things move fast in AI and exec search. So the article frames 2025 as really a turning point in exec search regarding AI. And I think that's come true. I think anybody who works in the industry and across most sectors, AI has really been pivotal this year. And we've talked about AI for years. I used to recruit for AI back before it was a thing. And now, this year, I think has really been the fruition of it coming through. And you use AI tools. I use AI tools. Everybody does. But I think there's some really important points that are highlighted. And actually, again, it's a little bit retrospective to look at how some of these leaders are talking about the impact. And really, now my opinion is probably a lot stronger and more negative than theirs in the article, okay, which I'll come to. But yeah, a big fan of AI and I have been for a long time, but it's got to be restricted, okay? And in exec search, it's really, really dangerous, okay? And I'll come to that. But first, I think it's really good to understand what AI is. Okay, now you know what AI is, and everybody who's listening probably thinks, I know all about AI, what's I'm talking about. But a CTO friend of mine said a few weeks ago to me, and we're talking about some AI problems, and he said, the name's misleading. AI is not intelligent, okay, at all. What AI is a very, very clever autocomplete. Okay, now that's it. And if you start thinking of AI, Claude, ChatGPT, whatever you might, or any tools you've got as just a clever autocomplete, you sort of treat it a little bit differently. Okay. What it does is it looks at historical data and it predicts something based on that. So now bringing that into exec search and something that the article references is really the danger there is that you basically are looking at past leadership and replicating it. Okay. And that could be really, really damaging. In food tech, it's especially damaging because, as I say, this is a nascent industry. We're looking for innovation and, potential and new leadership. Now, if you've got an AI recruitment tool in a big organization that's looking at past leaders or leaders in your competitors, where they come from, and they all come from the same schools or the same backgrounds, it's going to predict that. So it's going to match against that. And you're going to amplify that. Okay. And that's what AI does. And the pivot moment has been this year, and it has been that more and more people are relying on AI tools for recruitment or for screening or for reducing shortlists. And that is incredibly dangerous.
And just allow me to sort of summarize that back to you. The issue here is that if we base our decision-making about the recruitment of leaders on historical data, we leave no room for innovation and thinking about appointing people that might not fit the previous profile of leadership that has been in position. But as a result of doing that, we might miss out on some of those potentially really impactful characteristics of the leaders of tomorrow that aren't factored into AI's analysis. Is that?
Yeah. AI is really good at spotting patterns, but it can't spot potential. It might be recruitment specific, but really, you look at, people from private schools have done really well in leadership in banking, say, and all it's just going to amplify that. So it's going to amplify that bias, and it's not going to open new candidates, diversity, innovation. And it's actually could stifle innovation across industry, not just across, agri-food tech where I work. It could stifle everything. We're in this stage now where you actually have this kind of AI war where candidates and leadership candidates are kind of using AI agents to redesign their profile and to fire it out at potential opportunities. And then you have an AI tool at the other end that's screening that profile. So the AI tool, talking to the AI tool, and you're going to people are going to maybe have to do that to escalate their potentials to get through these tools to get in front of the people. And so you section out and you amplify that bias, which is just so dangerous.
Just playing devil's advocate, could you argue that as long as you've got historical data that essentially has evidence relating to potentially every type of candidate that you would expect to be going forward for a particular position. If you did have a complete data set, then actually the judgments of the AI would be acceptable in the sense that it would factor in the complete picture. Or is that just unrealistic that you'd have any AI that would have that degree of data?
Well, I think, Charlie, you're right to some extent. I think AI tools are learning on more and more data. Okay. But they're just an autocomplete. So they're basically going to look at what's happened and compare it and fill in the next best word. Okay. Yeah. So what they don't do is, as we were talking about, that spotting potential, spotting somebody who could move industry, now when they have enough data of people who've moved industry into brand new technology, great. But we're talking about industries that are relatively new, tech that's new. So you have to keep this human element in the process. Where they're great, and I feel they're really valuable is on the admin, and I use AI and we use AI to help, clean profiles or to reduce on some of the admin around search. But I think it's essential that it's a human that is looking at that final kind of yes, no, if somebody should be included in a shortlist and exploring their data. And often, throughout my career, it's the people who might not look right on paper who really surprise you and are really the interesting ones. Okay. And AI can't find that, it can't find, actually this person, because they don't get in front of that final conversation because they've been filtered out or they haven't made it to say, well, actually, yeah, but I grew up doing this, or I'm really passionate about shifting out of my career in this. That is all that it looks like. I really want to do this and I can really make a change. If I was recruiting for myself in Myco Search, I wouldn't match according to AI, because my background's tech and different. So,
can you, through your own experience, just explain, because I think you began to sort of touch on it there, but explain to us the sort of process that you go through in executive search and where AI, from your sort of expectation, should sort of hand things over, if you like. What is the point at which you go? Because again, excuse my absolute naivety on this, but I'm thinking like, okay, we've got a role, we've got a 1,000 potential, people that could fulfill that role. Well, meeting with all 1,000 people to determine those nuances that you've just described is a heavy lift, and someone's got to pay for it. So if I'm thinking, well, it's not 1,000 that I want to get in front of, but I could use an AI or a filtering system of some description to get down to 20. Is it 20 that we then meet with, or is it 5? Or, in your experience, where does the line get drawn from using, and I'm not even going to say AI, but software tools essentially, versus getting the human judgment involved?
Well, my experience and my angle is actually the opposite. I think you use AI to increase that amount. Okay, you use you use it to make the funnel much, much bigger, and that's where it's really providing value to exec search, because normally that is quite a heavy hands-on role of a research team. You've got 3 or 4 people who are out there looking for profiles to bring into your funnel. Okay, and then you're looking across them and reducing that. Now, actually, I think I like AI or tools to increase that funnel, from like 100 to 1,000 or whatever it might be. And then using your judgment, reduce that down to the ones that are worth pursuing through. But again, you've got to have that, and you can use the tool sometimes to reduce the number. But I think really AI is proving valuable to increase the funnel and give you potential maybe to reach out to other people. So that initial reach out, there's a lot of AI tools that are handling that. So I could actually hit out to more people search team could do in the past. And the impact of that is probably that exec search teams might be smaller. They might not need as many people to do a lot of the admin that then leads to your short list of, 20 or 30 people that you're reducing down to present to clients. I think something that the article hits on as well that is key is that data visibility. Now, a lot of exec search, in my experience, has been black box. Okay, and some of you listeners may maybe this might not, but you give a search to an agency, and they'll go out and they'll give you a shortlist, okay, and you don't really know how that shortlist has come about. Now, throughout my career, I've been about open and transparent, open book, and I think that's now with AI is becoming essential. It's not kind of optional. So that a board can say, well, here's our shortlist for the 5 or 6 really strong candidates, but here's all the people we approached, and here's the people who were wrong, and here's the people who are missing from that shortlist and why. At Myco Search, that's our approach. It's open book, but I think a lot of companies are going to have to go that way, because you need to be able to prove that the data has, or AI hasn't eliminated people that could be right, or where you've made that decision. So kind of that data transparency, I think AI is dangerous there, because it's, it might knock out people and you might not know why. Amazon had a recruitment tool they were trialing, and this is a few years ago now, and they pulled it and they cancelled it because it was actively discriminating against female candidates. It was engineering, and the roles were male dominant. And so because it looked at the data set, it was all successful kind of males, it basically discriminated against females, and it discriminated against certain all-women universities, for example, or colleges, and because it had never had anybody through from those, so it knocked them out. Right. Now, if you'd gone live with that tool, you might not know it's done this, that your candidate pool has been amplified by the AI.
And this is a leading question, so feel free to give me a solid forward defensive on this, which I should say, I had to try and segue this in. We are recording on the first day of the Ashes series, so any cricket-related, I wanted to get a cricket-related analogy in. We've done quite brilliantly towards the back end of the first day down in Perth. But anyway, such a segue. But Simon, when you think about the use of these tools, and the fact that, as you've described, there is a place for the use of AI to essentially help on the admin and the research side of things, and to essentially make those functions of what you do more efficient and more powerful in the sense of the research element that you described before. What does that allow you to do more than you could do before in terms of that additional time and resource and energy? Like you mentioned the softer side of cultural development. Like, is that an area that you're able to lean into to a greater extent? And what additional value can you provide in that space as a result?
I mean, we look at with this year, and we talk about AI, and we look at about roles that are going to be eliminated. Okay, and a lot of recruitment and exec search is vulnerable, but I think it amplifies that need for a human to be involved with strong judgment and good experience and expertise to be able to kind of sanity check your shortlist and your candidates at the final level. So if anything, it kind of amplifies the need to not rely on these tools. And I think certainly, in this industry where we're looking for kind of industry changes and really people who can innovate and be very sort of dynamic, I think it gives us more people to look at in a way. So you've got, like I said, that big funnel. You can drill down on more people. So it gives me more time to do that side of the role, okay, or certainly the team, and it frees up some availability to have those human conversations. You were talking about how many do we actually talk to? We can probably talk to more, and I think that's invaluable. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about speaking to people, finding out what the passion is, finding out what the potential is, and making that recommendation of the best matches. And for years and years, I've always put forward a shortlist with, say, 4 or 5 people on who are really well matched, but there's always one wild card for me. And it's somebody, and I always have to kind of explain to the CEO or whoever I talk to, look, they don't look good on paper, okay? But when we've spoken to everybody, this person is just really passionate, comes across really well. I think they could do a really, really good job. And sometimes they're the one who gets it, sometimes they're not, but they also give a really good angle for, a board or an exec committee to be interviewing people and to give comparisons, and they're often in the final 2, if not the person who gets it. So I love the wild card. Now, AI can't give you that. It doesn't give you the wild card. Only like getting that through conversation can give you that.
God, how utterly, I know you absolutely don't disclose this, but to know that you're going into a job interview, you know,
As the wild card, yeah.
I'm the bloody wild card here. Brilliant.
I do sometimes tell people that.
You do tell them?
Yeah. I mean, I'll be speaking to someone and I'll say, look, you know, Bob or whatever your name is, you know, you don't match the skills on the role. You know, you haven't got this and this that they're looking for, but I 100% believe you could do it. You know, you've done this, which is similar in some other role, and you know, you really want to do this. So I'm going to put you forward, but I'm putting you forward as a bit of a wild card, and you know, you're going to have to just knock it out of the park and explain your potential. And you know, they go into interview knowing that. So yeah.
Oh wow.
Do tell people about the wild cards.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love the idea that any of those wildcards previously have then sat in their interview and the first thing when they've asked the first question is go, well, I know I'm the wild card. I would respond really well to that. I think I'd be like,
that's pretty cool, actually.
Simon, it's brilliant. I know we've just touched upon some of the very top level insights from the article, but I thought that was a really interesting breakdown. And there's definitely some key themes that have come through that I think anyone that's interested in, you know, the world of executive search is going to draw some comfort, I think, you know, from the conversation that we've had. You know, we hear so much, don't we, about AI is, I know it's a very lazy observation, but AI is going to take all our jobs and all this sort of stuff. But to actually hear that, no, it's a tool that can be harnessed and utilized for particular, supporting activities for the work that you do, I think makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Let's move forward now, though. And I'm fascinated to see what you're going to do with this. If I was to hand you a magic wand, Simon, and you could change one thing about the commercial world this instant, what would that one thing be?
Okay, so I think I've got a good one here. Bringing it back to kind of food tech and food, okay? Now, the problem today is that a lot of food businesses are driven by profit, okay? So we've got food that's bad for us but sells, or is really cheap, or really damaging to the environment or health, okay? Now, my magic wand would be to make every food company in the world have to optimize for human and planetary health first and profit second, okay? Now, that would be massive. If you can imagine what that would do, it would basically, just think about it. So basically, a company would then have to produce sort of nutrient dense food. It'd be kind of low carbon, low waste, a low impact production. It would change the way food is marketed. It would change the way, you know, food is produced. And it would change hiring, you know, because so companies would hire people who are able to kind of innovate and produce kind of within health and planetary constraints, but still make a profit because they still need to make some money. And capital would flow into those areas, companies that are looking for new technologies, healthier technologies, safer to produce food. So it'd be awesome. Overnight, boom, the whole food system would change.
It is such an elegant suggestion and such a wonderfully optimistic and unrealistic, but at the same time, that's the whole point of the magic wand.
Is it, Charlie, right? Is it? Because really, there's people who are doing this, okay, as if that magic wand's hitting them. You know, they're trying to change things, okay? And
I'm so pleased you caught me up on that, because I was being far too pessimistic with that claim. My partner, Vic, shout out to Victoria Holmes here. She's the PR lead at Riverfood Organic. And I think from what you described there, one of those examples, the organization itself is set up and geared towards certainly having a really, really close consideration of the impact on planet and people, and that profit ultimately sits as a third key element. But no, brilliant suggestion. Love it. Think it's a great observation. Simon, thank you so much for joining me on the show this morning. It's been fantastic to have you on.
Yeah, really fun. Yeah.
And that's all for today's episode of The Responsible Edge. A big thank you to Simon Hill for joining me on today's show. As a reminder, this episode was brought to you by TrueMark, the mark of trusted communications. Visit truemark.com to learn more. I'm Charlie Martin. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. See you next time.